Again, I'm Roberta McIntyre, President and CEO of Fire Safe Sonoma. Also want to remind you to check our calendar for upcoming events and to stay in the loop, subscribe to our updates. Last month on our speaker series, we heard from Iris Harrell about how to prepare your property in a way that insurance companies will be more likely to offer you a home insurance policy. This presentation is on our YouTube channel, so feel free to check that out after watching today's speaker series, of course. Now, this program we do once a month on the fourth Thursday of the month from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, except for the month of December when we're dark. We have about 4 or 5 years of content on our YouTube channel currently. So go check it out. If you haven't been following all of our speaker series programs, go ahead and go check it out on our YouTube channel. There's some amazing content on there that is all relevant to wildfire safety and risk reduction. So with that said, this month we're pleased to be joined by Sashi. I'm not going to do your last name, Sashi, because I will mess it up. I still don't have that down after all this time. But Sashi will share insights from her work on the Wildfire Resilience Corridors pilot program and her role with the Governor's Wildfire and Forest Resilience Task Force, offering a behind-the-scenes look at how statewide strategies are shaping local wildland fire safety. Sashi joined PG&E in 2024 to help align wildfire and climate resiliency efforts with local governments and communities. She previously led Sonoma County's Wildfire Vegetation Management Program with the UC Cooperative Extension. Sashi served on the, is it Mill City or Mill Valley City? Mill City Council from 2015 to 2022. And as mayor in 2020. She helped found the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority and served on boards for the MCE Clean Energy, Marin LAFCo, and the Marin County Council of Mayors and Council Members. Earlier roles include chairing Mill Valley's CERT Steering Committee and vice chairing its Emergency Preparedness Commission. She's written on wildfire prevention for Reason, City Journal, and Western Cities. Sashi is completing a master's degree at the Naval Postgraduate School, researching how visual tools support wildfire vegetation management. She is also a visiting scholar at UC Berkeley's Disaster Lab, focused on improving community resilience through technology and communication. Sashi is now in the top 10 of our longest bios for speaker series, folks. Let's give a warm welcome to Sashi, and I'm going to hand over the program to her, and I'll turn off my microphone and video, and we'll enjoy the presentation. Again, don't forget to drop your questions in the chat as we go. See you then.
Well, thank you so much, Roberta. And the one thing that was left out of that is I'm also a board member of Fire Safe Sonoma, which is an important part of my role here. And I want to mention there are a lot of friends I see in the audience there, but I want to mention that we do have Seth Shalit from Fire Safe, the Fire Safe Council of Santa Clara, and we have Scott Crowdy from Mendocino County Fire Safe Council. So lots of good partnerships from our neighbors here as well. So thank you so much for having me this month. I always enjoy the Fire Safe Sonoma speaker series. It's always really educational, and they're always really high quality speakers. So I'm really honored to be asked to be able to speak to you today. So some of you, or most of you, probably know me from my previous role with UC Cooperative Extension as a wildfire program manager in Sonoma County. I moved to Sonoma County 3 years ago and previously lived in Marin, where I was on the city council, which Roberta mentioned. And I started with PG&E just a year and a half ago, and I will tell you a little bit more about that. Okay. So we'll talk a little bit about the background of how this kind of all got started, and we'll kind of a little background on PG&E wildfire risk, and then talk about the pilot and talk about the task force. Okay, so PG&E has a stand that catastrophic wildfires shall stop. It's It's something that is a core stand that the company has made. We talk about it in meetings regularly. It's one of the core company positions that catastrophic wildfire shall stop. However, the wildfire mitigation work that PG&E usually does is usually not connected to the existing work of communities and governments. I know all of you are familiar with that. So we're missing opportunities to collaborate, to coordinate, and share costs with our partners. So PG&E's leadership actually recognized this gap in 2023 and had the idea to create a whole new position specifically dedicated to that. And as far as I know from talking to the other utilities in the state and outside, we're the only utility to have really recognized that gap and to have created a position specifically to make the connection between the utility wildfire resilience work and the communities. So Roberta gave you a little bit about my background. I was on the Mill Valley City Council, 7 years, 1 year as mayor. I was on the LAFCo. I helped found the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority, UC Cooperative Extension. We talked about that. And also the way I'm presenting, I'm kind of covering up some of it. There we go. We'll have to maybe do that a little bit throughout here. So just as an overview, PG&E's service territory is more than 50% of the service territory is high fire risk areas. I think you all know that, being in Sonoma County. I won't dwell on that too much, but PG&E has since 2017 really worked on creating layers of wildfire protection. Wildfire cameras that PG&E has, a lot of the California Wildfire Network cameras were paid for by PG&E, and PG&E continues to really be committed to that program. There are these safety and infrastructure protection teams that protect equipment in advance of fires and assist first responders. There are enhanced power line safety settings that very quickly, within a fraction of a second, turn off the power if a hazard is detected. There are public safety power shutoffs, which you all know and know very well. And then there's a lot of new upgraded equipment. There's undergrounding, and then there's, of course, vegetation management work. So that's just a background. Most of that I think you all already know. So we'll talk about this Wildfire Resilience Corridors pilot. So this is not new to a lot of you here on the call, but how do communities do coordinated resilience work? Well, they do it through a CWPP. So that comes from the 2003 Healthy Forest Restoration Act. And there are really three components to a CWPP that you're aligning those priorities, those assets that you want to protect, both community assets, natural assets, across all layers of government, all stakeholder groups, and then you prioritize areas for hazardous fuels reduction and for reducing structure ignitability. And so then when communities are in that work, what are they asking PG&E for? And when I was on the city government side, what was I asking PG&E for? And it was, well, where do you consider to be areas of risk? So that could be sharing some spatial data for CWPP risk assessments. Well, where are you planning to work so we can force multiply? So that's work coordination and what PG&E likes to call bundling. And then can we work together to reduce hazardous fuel? And that is project co-development and what I'm going to call Wildfire Resilience Corridors. Not planned for the placement of myself here, so apologize that on the slides. The pilot counties that we're going to work on this year, because we had to start somewhere, are Sonoma, Napa, and El Dorado. And those are based on areas that are high wildfire risk, areas that had a great deal of maturity in their CWPPs and their wildfire resilience programs, and areas that CAL FIRE leadership recognized as being good places to start. So we did validate that with CAL FIRE leadership. And the components of the program really are those three things that I said here, is sharing of data for risk assessments, figuring out how we can do work coordination, and project co-development. So in the next year, the plan is to develop a set of projects based on areas that would benefit the reduction of risk to utility infrastructure and to communities. Identify these project areas and then develop the projects and include them in a CWPP so that over time we can figure out how to fund and implement those projects. The place I'm furthest along with that is, of course, Sonoma County, my home county, where I sit on the Fire Safe Council board and have the best relationships. But Napa and El Dorado are not too far behind. And all three counties are really leaders in the state. And I'm really happy to be working with these organizations that are really so far along in the process and helping me learn a lot and how to combine what the utility work is with the work the communities are doing. And I'll put Marin in as a footnote, since that is my old stopping grounds. They are doing a CWPP update coming up soon, so we are doing some work with Marin as well. But those are the three pilot counties. So I can go into more detail on that. I think we could maybe, I'll just do kind of a quick presentation there, and then we can kind of get into the details with questions. But I'll just leave it at that for now. That's the pilot, the pathway for the pilots. And then I'll quickly talk about the task force, and then we should just spend the rest of the time, I think, on discussion. So the Governor's Wildfire and Forest Resilience Task Force, I think many of you are actually pretty involved in that, but I will just kind of give an overview. The task force came out of the tree mortality work group, and then turned into a set of, in 2021, a set of 99 actions to improve, to align all the state agencies and the Forest Service and BLM and other federal agencies in wildfire and forest resilience work, and try to concentrate some resources there. There is now, as of now, there is a task force utility working group that is working on this one of the 2025 deliverables, which is a utility wildfire resilience partnership program. So we were well positioned because they had already created my position to do exactly this, but some of the other utilities are involved in that conversation too. So this is what is in there right now in the deliverables, that the utilities are investing billions of dollars in reducing ignitions, but there could be much more coordination between these efforts and related landscape and community resilience programs. And the example that they always give is the Lake Tahoe Powerline Resilience Corridor, from which this program is named, where they did a large, I believe it's 250 feet in total, fuel break around a transmission line in coordination with Tahoe National Forest. So the other task force activities that I think this group is going to be pretty interested in is the emergency proclamation, which I think, again, I'm hoping many of you already know about. On March 1st, the governor declared a wildfire state of emergency and created a permit streamlining process for all hazardous fuel type projects that would have to go through any permitting under the California Natural Resources Agency or California EPA. So CEQA, forest practice rules, Coastal Act, CDFW, Water Board, any of that kind of permitting towards the end of reducing regulatory drag on fuels reduction projects and trying to get as many of those fast-tracked as possible. We were very early to that table because I was really interested in that and wanting to make sure that we supported that streamlining. When I was a council member, I did spend 3 years trying to get a statutory CEQA exemption through for wildfire resilience projects. I've written about CEQA being a drag on wildfire resilience projects, totally understanding the desire to make sure that impact on development is, the environmental impacts are considered, but wildfire resilience, in my opinion, the whole construct is really not well applied to wildfire resilience projects, because the idea is that you have a condition that you want to maintain, and then whatever you're doing is an impact on that. Whereas with these wildfire resilience projects, we're trying to mitigate a hazardous condition and trying to indicate what the impact and mitigation of the mitigation is, a little bit circular. So there needs to be a different way of thinking about this. And the governor's task force is really leading the state's efforts to, as they say, cut green tape. And the emergency proclamation is their first sort of test run on that. So not only are we putting in and have put in a number of projects and already have 2 projects completed, many of which we started in Sonoma County because that was where a lot of that risk was for us. I'm looking to put together some joint projects. So for those of you out of county here, this is a call for you guys, that we are looking at what kind of joint projects can we submit jointly to the portal, where there is a utility nexus. This is not saying that we're going to pay for everything. I think none of you want us to do that, because any projects that we pay for, the ratepayers all pay for. So we want to be very careful and targeted in how we use our money, but we want to be contributors and partners to extend the work that people are doing, and be able to do that with environmental considerations. So everything that goes through the emergency proclamation has to comply with the state environmental protection plan. Included in that, one of the partners I'm working with on that is Caltrans. So we're doing a joint wildfire risk assessment. They have a public risk assessment of their priority corridors that they're doing veg management work on, and we're overlaying that with our what are known as areas of concern, and figuring out where our kind of joint areas of interest are where we can work. So I'm meeting with them every couple of weeks now. Also looking at how we can align with CAL FIRE unit plans. The kind of two obvious areas are power lines tend to follow ridge tops and roadways. Strategic ridge top fuel breaks are in every unit plan. They also have fuel treatment goals, and if there's a way to kind of align with that, we'd like to do that. So meeting with CAL FIRE leadership on a regular basis on that as well. I've engaged with a couple of the state conservancies, the State Coastal Conservancy and Sierra Nevada Conservancy, on collaborative risk assessment. Is there any way that we can provide some data to them on areas that we are concerned in and have that be a consideration in their grants? That's what we're doing with those two. And then the last one I think will be interesting to this group, because it's really starting with the work we're doing in Sonoma County. The exercise that we did was working with Marshall, was to go through the entire county, look at all the transmission lines, and look at where are the areas that are considered to be strategic from a fire prevention and suppression standpoint. Where would we want to create a strategic ridge top fuel break? Where would we want to do prescribed burns that's near utility infrastructure? So then we came up with, well, how can we help other people do the same thing? Let's put a white paper together on what are the considerations for planning prescribed burning around utility infrastructure. So we're going to be collaborating on that with CAL FIRE, Southern California Edison, and UCANR, I believe, is going to be able to help. Unfortunately, our local fire advisor has gone on maternity leave, but when she comes back, I think she's going to help us with sort of round 2 of this. But that is the goal for that. So that was sort of a rapid tour, but I thought that people would have a lot of questions, and so wanted to kind of open it up for that. And I can go back to any slides that anybody wants to see. But wanted to then kind of open it up for anybody who wants to talk about what I'm working on here, and what we can all work on together.
Okay, I don't see any questions in the chat yet. But does anybody from Team Fire Safe Sonoma have any questions for Sashi? Could we get a link for the white paper?
It hasn't been written yet. We're working on it, targeting towards the end of the year to finish it.
Stay tuned for that, I guess.
Yeah.
And let's see.
Oh, also working with Karuk. I forgot to mention they said they would also help out.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Do you want to go into a little more detail with regard to the,
The pilot or the
government?
task force? Sorry, I spoke over you. Go ahead, Roberta.
Yeah, go ahead. The task force would be cool if you could go elaborate on that.
Yeah, so are people familiar with the governor's task force? Maybe give me some emojis, or anybody want to pipe up on that. So the task force meets quarterly, and if every other time is in Sacramento and every other time is in the field. The last meeting was in Marin, and hosted by Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. The next meeting is in the Inland Empire in September, and then the one after that will be in Sacramento. The next meeting, they will give kind of a draft, or like a soft draft of the 2025 action plan update, which updates those 99 actions. Some of those will include the utility action items, but those are the items that the state and the state agencies will commit to trying to fulfill over the next few years to increase the pace and scale of prescribed burning, for example, to cut green tape for wildfire resilience projects, to improve CalVTP, to figure out how to deploy different kinds of grant vehicles to make sure that the work that there's concentrated work according to a regional priority plan, and that the regional priority plan is the part of the Department of Conservation's Regional Forest and Fire Capacity, or FFC, grant process. Looks like we good. Yeah, go ahead.
Somebody's interested in hearing if there are any chemicals such as long-term retardants that are being employed in these projects or being investigated for future use.
We do use, some of this is a little outside my wheelhouse, but I can always, for more detail, if people want more detail, I can always get information for people. But we do use some retardants. The safety and infrastructure protection teams go out and will spray retardant on poles in advance of fires. One of the things I didn't mention is I have a small dream of creating the IBHS of utility wildfire and creating a field experimentation program. And one of the things we've talked about in that field experimentation would be to look at long-term retardant use. So that is, it's an area of inquiry. Let's see. Go ahead.
Is there a map of,
Seth wanted to know about other areas.
yeah, is there a map of the pilot project for the transmission lines in Sonoma County?
Not yet. So we've just we've done the exercise of kind of identifying the areas, and now we have to develop them. And the map will be in the Fire Safe Sonoma project intake portal, which I'm sure Roberta has mentioned in previous talks. And that is the going to be the source for all projects in the county. So that's why we wanted to use that. And Roberta, actually, I don't know if you want to say anything about the portal, but that's the vehicle that we're going to use.
Yeah, I don't want to mention too much about the portal at this time in this forum with this particular audience. Yeah.
Yeah, understood. But Fire Safe Sonoma is going to be the central, fire, as we usually are, the central repository for wildfire resilience projects in the county. So we're going to use that. And so there'll be some maps available from that once we've kind of got them in the system.
I have a question, Sashi, and you may have covered it already to some degree. I apologize if you did. I was fussing with that studio light here. But so PG&E, and maybe, with your role in PG&E, you might have trouble answering this, I'm not sure, but we've talked about it before. So I imagine in a hypothetical semi-perfect world, because nothing is perfect, having PG&E's vegetation crews work collaboratively with county roads and city infrastructure that do roads, road vegetation management along roadways in cities and in unincorporated county areas. It would be really cool if we could develop a system wherein we can know when PG&E is working in a certain area well in advance, like a year or two in advance would be great. And then when we apply for funding to do roadside vegetation projects, we could ideally land them in that same window on that same geography and work more collaboratively with PG&E. That would be kind of the one end of the sort of ideal hypothetical. The ideal hypothetical would be that PG&E works collaboratively with all of us, and we do projects together where PG&E, of course, will do the conductor clearance, and then we can work collaboratively also with the road outfit, whether it's county infrastructure or whoever, that's doing the roadside work, and marry those two entities together with a grant-funded project and get a lot of economy of scale and a lot of bang for the buck if we could just work that way collaboratively. Is there any hope for that, or are we getting towards closer and closer to that?
Well, so that impulse is exactly what created this role. So that's what I was trying to do in Marin was, hey, can't we, Jason Weber, the Marin County Fire Chief, had said to me, like, last week we were working on one side of the road and PG&E was literally on the other side of the road and we didn't know that. And it came up the other day, Ben Nichols was like, well, it looks like we missed an opportunity to work with PG&E on that roadside work there. So I have spent a year and a half digging into that question. And there's reasons why it hasn't happened already, right? Because it is complicated. But that is a goal. And I think that it maybe isn't going to happen on a totally minute level, but I think it will in a big picture way. And so the big picture answer is, where's PG&E working? Everywhere. Clearing every on every distribution line, every transmission line. I just spent the morning with the crew that manages all the PG&E owned lands and manages the access roads, and they have an even greater kind of vision for the work, because they're also subject to PRC 4291, but most of the time the veg crews are really looking at 4292 and 93, which is maintaining certain clearances around the line, a minimum clearance. So in order to do that, they are patrolling those once or twice a year, and they, sending out an inspector, and then that inspector creates a scope of work, and then the tree work happens. So the scheduling of that can be a little fluid. And so there has been something of a reluctance to give kind of an advanced schedule for that. So the year in advance is all of it. It's all going to be done at some point in the year, given, within limited operating periods, within, where we can access depending on weather and all those kinds of things. So then it's a matter of, I think, less kind of pinning it on where are you going to be so we can be there too, more on, hey, here's where we're going to be so we can pin our, PG&E can pin our work on where you're going to be. That's more likely. The Fire Safe Sonoma project coordination working group, we had Sonoma Public Infrastructure was there, and Rob Halling was mentioning, hey, our guys are going to be out there Tuesdays and Wednesdays. We'd love to collaborate with you. We'd love to collaborate on traffic control. There could be a potential to waive permitting fees. We can find economies of what if we can work together. So that's the beginning of the conversation. I think starting with, where are those projects going to happen? Where's public infrastructure going to be, or where is that roadside work? Where's the Measure H fuels crew going to be? And then I think we can attach the scheduling of the PG&E tree work to that. I think that's a much more likely way to do it. But that devil in that details. That's what we're trying to. That's the work. That's what we're trying to figure out right now.
Okay, so then
I think Sonoma is going to be one of the first areas that we are able to do that. Honestly.
Yeah, so that could work really well as long as PG&E is receptive to, and we can give them advance notice, probably better than they can give us. That sounds like a good kind of a workflow, I guess, where, because we'll know pretty early when things are being done, at least with regard to the projects that Fire Safe Sonoma is aware of. And then so we have a contact at PG&E with their vegetation management team and able to say, hey, the middle of August, we're going to be doing, this particular 3 miles of road. You'll say Cavedale Road,
Yeah, great.
You guys want to bring your crews out and work collaboratively. And then we could do the same thing with county infrastructure. We could get Johannes to do the same thing and say, hey, Johannes, we usually work pretty closely with them on the roadside stuff anyway, because they're the lead agency for our categorical exemption anyway. So that could be pretty cool if we can get that ball rolling. What's your confidence level that we could actually do that, maybe even this season?
I think we can do it. I mean, I think we can do at least a couple. So I'm, and I don't want to commit Daniel McBride and April Kennedy to anything. I know some of you probably know the Veg team. But we're actually going to have a meeting on Monday to talk a little bit more about that. So it's really a matter of figuring out what those things are. And PG&E does have, as some of you may remember, does have a regional service model that we're trying to really deepen and implement, where there is a regional vice president. The regional vice president in this area is Dave Canny. And so each of the functions has kind of a regional roll up too, so they can all coordinate with each other. So it's just a matter of getting this outside piece also coordinated in. Like, okay, so we're gonna do this Cavedale Road project, give us some notice so we can try to coordinate. And some of that might work out and some of it may not, right? Like, it may not be possible to totally, like, oh, hey, we're gonna be working over here and we can't do it that day. So it may not totally work out, but I think that there will be at least some successes, and we can pick some of the bigger types of projects. I am seeing also the emergency proclamation as that kind of forcing function to get some of that collaboration going, because one of the projects that we just submitted, there is a project that Matt Green's developing on Timber Cove Road that's in the same footprint. So we're going to try and see what we can do, no promises there, but it's the same footprint that we're submitting for the emergency proclamation that he's submitting for the emergency proclamation. So surely we can find some connections there to work together.
So I want to try that. And I also want to add an element of doing some serious press release work, some marketing work. So, I mean, I can imagine a hypothetical like using the Cavedale Road example. We're gonna do, 3 miles of Cavedale Road and the work's gonna begin on this date. And we've reached out to PG&E and, they've expressed an interest in collaborating. I think if we kind of put that kind of message in the media, it would help to, I don't know what the right word is, at least inspire their collaboration. Especially if we had, talks ahead of it, and they at least gave us some kind of verbal, yeah, we could probably try to be out there to help you guys out with that, and then take that and run with it and go, hey, we're doing this project and PG&E is going to help. And if they see that, it kind of forces their hand a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's all relationships, right? Like, the more we're in conversation, the more likely these things are to happen. So the bunch of the work that we're trying to get done at the moment in Sonoma County is that coastal zone work that has been hung up. There have been trees that have been marked in the coastal zone for like a year or more, where the risk is on the ground and we can't remove the tree because we are waiting on the CDP. So all those are going through the emergency proclamation suspension process right now. And we've had a number of determinations from the state, and the determinations from the state is, yes, you are meeting the state's environmental protection plan. We are comfortable with the BMPs and avoidance and minimization measures that you are using. And so we are going to give you a suspension of the Coastal Act for that. So we have now gotten several of those. The state has rigorously gone through our projects. And that should give people a level of comfort that, that this is not, work that's being done without consideration to the environment. I have ended up spending hours and hours and hours with our environmental teams. And it's been really heartening to see how much people care about the impact of the work that they're doing.
Okay. Yeah, I'm excited to try to get some, some momentum there. So somebody wrote in here, it's more of a comment than a question. I don't know if you'll be able to answer this. It might be more directed to the house crew proper, but
Amy's question, yeah, so just about going, you know, how can PG&E improve efficiency? So there, I think there, I don't know that specific location, so I don't want to speculate on that, but I'll give you some general cases where something like that might happen, where you're marking trees multiple times, or and the work not getting done. So if the work isn't getting done, it's generally constrained by a permit or a customer not wanting the work to be done. So then the work gets delayed for one reason or another. So
do they have to go back out and reassess it, like occasionally?
they have to, yeah,
I think that was part of it.
once or twice a year, yeah.
Yeah, it seemed like, okay, they go out and they mark it, and then they come out and mark it again, and, you know, it may feel to some people like, okay, nothing happens until you get 12 marks on the tree.
Right, yeah. So again, like I can't comment on a specific tree, but you know, generally, you know, that's the population of work that I have been looking at with our internal teams for the emergency proclamation streamlining. So this is all work that people are starting to get anxious about, like, you know, well, we're not able to remove this tree, and we can see that it's starting to grow in towards the line, and it's, you know, this is going to be a problem. So there's some urgency there. So under the current emergency proclamation, the governor is recognizing that that kind of work needs to be streamlined. And the really good thing about that, I think, that is important to some of the people on the call, is that it's getting all the different state agencies to line up with each other. Because you know, something that happens all the time, you know, my old boss Stephanie is on the call, and she and I went down to Paso Robles a few years ago and talked to them about their emergency wildfire fuels reduction work that they did, because they had a bunch of homeless encampments where one year they had 75 fires along the river, and they declared an emergency with Regional Water Quality Board, and they wanted to remove a bunch of trees, and they were hung up by they had to do multiple you know, it was 3 or 5 times, you know, the number of trees that they were removing that they needed to plant somewhere else, and they weren't allowed to do grazing, which is why Stephanie and I were down there. But they for some reason were allowed to do mastication but not grazing. So there were some odd things. There are weird things that pop up when different agencies try to kind of do oversight in an area that's a little outside of their purview. You know, they're looking at regional water quality, but they were kind of giving some restriction or advisory over you know, this wildfire mitigation work. So this process is preventing that from happening. It's forcing all those agencies to review something at the same time and to, you know, with each other. So if one person gives an advisory that contradicts the other one, it should be resolved. And that type of streamlining, that's not just streamlining, that's really having those things not be in conflict with each other and kind of forcing the state to resolve those conflicts. That is something that I think we all want. I think everybody wants that. Like we want to see each of those agencies do their oversight, but in such a way as resolves those conflicts, so that when it comes back to you at the end, you're not like, I can't do this and that at the same time. I can't comply with both of these things at the same time and achieve the goal that I'm trying to achieve on this land. So that is, I think, one of the big hopes of the task force work and the emergency proclamation work, is that will be resolved, and that will last after the emergency proclamation.
Yeah, and then I want to further unpack one other element in Amy's question. It has less to do with wildland fire safety and more to do with like winter storms. But is there a way, or does PG&E routinely send their arborists out to look at trees that might potentially fall during storm? Because Amy makes a good point in that if they could get ahead of the, you know, branches that are likely to fall during the storm, it'd be a lot less hours and labor spent during the storm at 3 o'clock in the morning, paying probably time and a half, at least overtime, maybe double time, for the troubleshooters to go out and clear that stuff during the storm.
Yes.
Okay. Beautiful.
they do, and it really kind of depends on the inspector, and it depends on the area and kind of the tolerance of the area, and the tolerance of the landowner, whether it's a public landowner or a private landowner. And like for example, on state parks, different state parks have different kind of sensitivities about what they're going to allow. I know there's a right-of-way expansion project in Humboldt County, where there are trees that just routinely knock out power to this one area. And state parks, we wanted to do this right-of-way expansion project out to a certain width, and state parks made us reduce it. So because it would be less impact. So it's a balancing act. So it depends on the height of the trees. It depends on the kind of general stand health. It depends on the tolerance of the community. It depends on the landowner. It depends on a lot of different things. So you'll see some variability in different areas because of those different characteristics.
Okay. Lisa has a pretty good question in here that I really like, and I'm gonna embellish it a little bit. So Lisa asked, does PG&E confer with CAL FIRE on the prioritization of undergrounding of power lines? I want to take that a step further. Do you know if when PG&E creates their risk maps that they have, which are different than the high fire severity zones, et cetera, PG&E has their own hazard risk maps. Do they look at CAL FIRE data, or do they confer with CAL FIRE, experts on when they create those maps?
So there's the fire severity zone maps, that's CAL FIRE. The
Right.
high fire threat district is CPUC. And that mapping exercise was done in consultation with CAL FIRE, but there's some different characteristics because it's a different consideration for it's just ignition from power line infrastructure versus CAL FIRE taking a much broader view. So there's some overlap between those, but they are different. HFTD versus fire hazard severity zone that I think most of us are kind of used to. That's been something is HFTD, the concept of HFTD, which is slightly different. Yeah.
And then the same question with underground and power lines, is CAL FIRE at the table there? I imagine it's almost the same thing.
Again, this is slightly outside of my wheelhouse, so I'll have to refer to the experts on the details, but kind of generally I can say, so we have that, a 10-year undergrounding plan that's been filed with the CPUC, and we're stepping through that plan and implementing that in different areas, and consulting with the local community and with local fire in the implementation of that longer plan. But if people want more details on that, I can definitely get that. I think I'll put my email in the chat. And Amy, if you've got specific trees you want to talk about, let's give me a call and we'll talk about it. And anything that people have that's a specific location, like this was true actually before I started at PG&E, but I would go to my PG&E friends and say like, hey, I've got something. And they would always kind of say, give me the address. Like, so it's a lot more likely to get a resolution if you can give me details. Like, not like, well, I've heard this and this have happened. I want to know, where did it happen? What are you talking about? Who can I follow up with? And then we'll get it dealt with.
Cool, very cool. And then Lisa also wrote, and I probably should have pulled this question earlier. She said, how does PG&E's efforts that you noted earlier relate to their obligation on their wildfire plan per Assembly Bill 1054?
Yeah, so 1054 is the wildfire fund, and there's some work being done in that area that actually the team that I report into in government relations is working on. So again, this is not totally my area, but it is the fund that was created to reimburse people after a fire that's utility caused, because California is unusual in that it has strict liability. If there is a fire caused from utility infrastructure, whether or not the utility was negligent, the utility is paying. So it gives PG&E greater incentive to do more work and to be more aggressive, because whether we're negligent or not, we're paying. And the wildfire fund is a piece of that. And I think that there's a lot of concern after Southern California about the stability of the wildfire fund. And so making the wildfire fund more robust and stable and able to handle future disasters is something that is a big topic of conversation right now, and people are working on right now.
Yeah, and then did you see Lisa's comment?
About undergrounding.
Yeah, more details are needed for prioritizing.
Yeah, Lisa, if you want more information, please reach out to me, and I'm happy to get some more detail on that. If you'd like, I can get from the undergrounding group, I can get some more information.
And then Luke would like to be connected to the team that was mentioned earlier.
Which team, Luke?
Yeah, Luke, can you elaborate on that? And then while Luke,
I always like to say to tell people, I mean, this was always kind of what I wanted before I started with PG&E. Is, you know, PG&E is huge. I'm barely kind of learning about how that all works. And my job is meant to be cross-functional, so I'm constantly trying to figure out who's who and how to, you know, like, oh, are you responsible for that? Let me, connect you into that. Like I was saying today, I spent the morning with the people responsible for PG&E owned lands and access roads. Think of me as your inside gal for PG&E. If you need to, if you have something you need, I can help you find that person. It's probably not me, but I'm very likely to be able to help you find who that is, and then you can get an answer. And again, that may not be the answer that you want, but I can find somebody who can who's the expert in that area.
yeah, the other thing too with that is, every once in a while I get into a conversation with somebody who is like totally frustrated with PG&E, and they're like, "Oh, PG&E is terrible," and I have to remind people that PG&E is a huge entity with a lot of departments, a lot of divisions, a lot of individuals that do different things. And yeah, I can understand how you could get frustrated with one particular branch or division of PG&E, but that's just that branch or division. It's not all of it. There are a lot of good branches and divisions within PG&E that do a lot of good work. Their public education division is phenomenal. The work that they do, just to call one out.
Yeah, and we can say that about government too, and you're talking to a libertarian here, so this is the the individual people are always, and the relationships are really what matters, and how we can get something done. And PG&E is, I think it's 29,000 people. It's a huge company, and it's a huge service territory. 75,000 square miles, I believe. That the people who work at PG&E live in that service territory. And we talk about that a lot. We talk about our hometowns. And one of the things that I've been, and I'm just going to, this is one of my wild ideas that hasn't been implemented yet, is I'm trying to figure out, can we start a virtual fire safe council just within the PG&E employees? Because there are a lot of PG&E employees who volunteer for the Fire Safe Council or are certs, or and PG&E, the safety culture is so strong. I've talked to you about something about this, Roberta. It's been a little bit of an adaptation for me. We start every meeting, literally every meeting at the company, you start with, okay, we're gonna start with safety. Is everybody in a safe place to start? If you're in the car, please pull over so that we can make sure that you're safe when we're having this meeting. If we're in person, it's going to be, all right, so who's going to call 911 if we have a disaster? Who can run the AED? Who can, we take care of that all. Like, it's so much part of the culture. There was a group recently that did a little promo within the company for, hey, who's got to go back? And I was like, oh, I'm so excited to see that they're doing this. And so I think there's a way of leveraging all those employees who are part of the hometowns that we work in, and who are very safety minded and very much kind of volunteer spirited. You know, how can we kind of harness that energy? I'd love to be able to do that.
Yeah. All right. Well, did we figure out who Luke wanted to get connected to?
I think he might have popped off, so I don't think he's with us anymore.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks. And then I think this might be our last question. Somebody wrote, how involved are you with Fire Safe Sonoma?
Oh, that's an easy one. I am
more or
on.
less kind of what's your role? I mean, your role isn't necessarily, just representing PG&E per se. You're a board member, so I'll let you answer that from your perspective, because I'm sure we have different perspectives.
Yeah. Well, so I'll tell you what I said in our breakout group yesterday with the county. I reached out to Roberta and said I wanted to be a part of the board. Like I live here. I have, been familiar with Fire Safe Sonoma. I have, I've known Roberta and a lot of the board members for, a few years. When I started with the company, I kind of checked it through the process and said, like, I really want to join the board. This is something I really want to get involved in, because Fire Safe Sonoma really is at the center of all this work and is, through kind of the, impetus of Measure H, has been kind of given some renewed energy to be that kind of center for the county, to be the, as it's always been the County Fire Safe Council, but really to be that center for that all of this kind of work. And so I really sought that out because I personally want to be involved in it. So what I said yesterday to the Sonoma County group was, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. Like I'm spending a lot of my personal time and energy on Fire Safe Sonoma because I really believe in this. And it just so happens that I work for PG&E, so I'm also bringing that perspective into the room. But I'm really here because I live here and because I believe in the mission of Fire Safe Sonoma.
Great, yeah. And then with the bio that I shared with everybody earlier, having your skill set on the board is huge. And then I don't know if folks realize, but Fire Safe Sonoma, in the early days, we had a representative from, the utilities, the wildfire division, on the board for a very long time. And then when he left the board, it kind of left a little vacancy there. So when I ran into Sashi and I worked on another project earlier, and then when I ran into her again after COVID, I'm like, hey, have you thought about joining the board? And so, so she got on the board, which I'm happy to have her. I think we all are, all of our board is happy to have her. So.
Thank you. I'm excited to be able to do this work. So, and I know, Seth's here and Scott's here, and they're doing this same kind of work in their counties, and they're each really innovative in their own ways. And so I want to, recognize them for that. And we're taking a lot of information from all of you to enhance the work that Fire Safe Sonoma is doing and really tune it to the Sonoma community, which is different. It's, every community is different. You got to make sure you do the work that really fits for the community.
Yeah, great. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Sashi. Good job. I hope folks enjoyed, the presentation and got something out of it. I sure did. And I didn't mean to put you on the spot here or there.
No problem.
Okay. And then just let folks know we have lots of exciting speakers lined up this year. In August, we're going to hear from Chief Ben Nichols again with the updated seasonal outlook. He did it a few months ago earlier in the season, and now that things are even drier and hotter, we're trying to do 2 of these CAL FIRE seasonal outlooks every year now instead of just one somewhere in the middle, because things do evolve. And I got a feeling he might share with us that the season's actually even a little warmer and hotter than it looked like it was going to be. Last year, I guess, was the hottest hottest year on record. And I earlier when Ben did his presentation, I got the idea that this year might even be hotter than last year. So anyway, so yeah, click on the link in the chat to register for the speaker series if you haven't already. And thanks so much for listening in. And we will see you next month for the CAL FIRE Seasonal Outlook. Thanks again, Sashi, for your presentation here. And thank you, Team Fire Safe Sonoma, Ada, Alina, and Malia. Thanks so much for your help. Yeah, you make it all look seamless. All right.